We are very, very excited to welcome everyone to our video game localization webinar. It's a pleasure to have you join us. My name is Hila, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at Blend. We'll talk about Blend in a minute. But before we dive in and I introduce you to Blend and to the game localization, I just wanted to make sure you're all familiar with our platform. This platform of the webinar, it's called SideTalk. And you can see that it's a more interactive experience for you guys and also for us. I just want to make sure that you see some buttons and features here and use them during the webinar because we want it to be as interactive as possible. So you have on the left side below the screen, you have a tab that is saying type your thoughts. That's the place to write comments that everyone can see on the feed of the webinar. There is a button that is called Ask the Host. Feel free to use it whenever you have a question. Type your question and we will address it. And there is also an option on the green button, Add a Note, which is private notes to yourself. When you get the summary of the webinar with all the slides and the comments, you will also get your personal notes just for you to be able to go back to your notes. If you want to write something specific, you can take notes. We will ask some questions during the webinar. Feel free to participate and answer. And as I said, you will get at the end the summary with the video recording and the feed and the slides. So it's very convenient for you to keep the records. You don't need to take any notes on your own. So with that intro of SideTalk, I'm happy to start our webinar and welcome our great speakers that we have today. We want to talk about video game localization. This is why we are here. I hope you guys are all familiar with, I guess you're more familiar than me with gaming. You're probably familiar with these popular memes. This is from a game developed by Nintendo in 1986. It was originally published in Japan, and when they took it to North America and Europe, there was this funny mistake that is now a meme. A winner is you. And this one is from the Metal Gear game, again, from a Japanese publisher. Another funny mistake that is a meme. And this one from another game originally published in Japan by Namco. I guess you're familiar with that. This is from 1991. So we are here to talk about video game localization and how to avoid localization mistakes, error, challenges. We do hope to give you some tips and insights to how a video game localization is done right. We hope we can help, and feel free to ask us questions, as I said, in the Ask the Host button. 1 minute about Blend before we start. For those of you who are not familiar with us, Blend is an end-to-end localization provider. We provide all localization services from text to voice to video in all verticals and all file types and media. We connect to many of the tech platforms and the TMSs of the world. We provide a service based on advanced AI, but also with a very strong human community of talents, linguistic talents, voice actors. And gaming is one of our strong verticals, and this is why we talk about it today, in addition to other verticals like e-learning, e-commerce, fintech, and many more. In the gaming, we provide lots of, services from localization QA to multilingual testing, functional testing, obviously all types of translations and localization, and also around the games when it comes to marketing and knowledge base and support and everything that is related to the game. And with that in mind, before this webinar, we ran a survey among gaming localization executives. And I want to share with you some highlights from the survey. For example, we asked our respondents what is their main challenge. What are the main challenges? So 62.5% said that they need help with in-game localization. 64% said that they need help with LQA. 100% actually struggle with functional QA, which is interesting, and I guess it's very challenging. And 47% said they need help with voiceover. So if we thought that we can address these issues and hopefully provide some insights, some tips for you guys on how to address these challenges. It's maybe encouraging to know that many people deal with the same issues. We show here some highlights from the survey. So someone wrote to us that the key challenge that she has is finding the right balance between the best equivalent for creative texts and adhering to character limits. We know that this is a big challenge when it comes to translation in the games. The space, the design is very limited, and sometimes it's hard to convey the same message in a different language in a very limited length. Also making sure that prompts that convey important information to the gamers remain clear and understood. And some people said that they lack the initial internationalization of the games, which is also a big challenge. So if you want to contribute to our survey, you can still take it actually. And this is the QR code to this survey. We also raffle a gift card to Amazon among the respondents, and we hope to keep it open for at least few more days. So feel free to take our survey and provide some more insights about game localization. And before we talk to our great speakers today, I just want to share with you one quick example of a client that we work with and someone that we can disclose the work that we do with, and also tell you a bit about the localization. This is Red Games. Red Games is a developer mostly specializing in family-friendly mobile games, and they maintain licenses to global brands like Lego, Hasbro, and Crayola. And two of their largest titles are Lego Bros and Transformers Tactical Arena that we focus on here, but we work with other games. We help them localize other games as well. This one is Lego Bros. I'm sure some of you are familiar with the game. It's available on almost all platforms. It's an action performer with a lot of character and team customization, using designs from many popular Lego sets and minifigures. And for this game, we localize the menus, the user experience, the user interface, and heads-up display into 14 languages, as you can see here, the list of languages. Another game that we localize with Red Games is the Transformers Tactical Arena. And this is a more strategic, real-time strategic game exclusive to Apple. It's a mobile game. And obviously, we localize the same elements like the previous one, but here there is more strategic. So it's a more strategic game, so there was more text localization required to explain the many different attack options with weapons and fighting systems. So it was a bit more challenging. And in this case, we provided the localization to 13 languages. These two games do not involve voice localization or voiceover, but we are going to show you some examples for voice localization later in the session. And with that in mind, I want to start with our first speaker, actually. We have with us Anne Chen. Anne is our head of sales in APAC. And we are very, very excited to have you here with us, Anne. I know it's now in Shanghai, in China, it's 11 p.m. So we thank you for staying awake for us this late time. I know you see now a question on the screen, so please join the survey and help us by answering it. We are going to speak with Anne about some localization insights focused on APAC and China, but not only. Anne has more than 15 years of localization experience, having worked with leading brands before she joined Blend, and lots of gaming experience. So she works with several AAA game developers, and I'm very excited to have her here to talk to us a bit. And the first topic we are going to talk about is the talent for this industry, for game localization. It's very unique in some aspects, the recruiting, the management, the type of tasks that they do. So Anne, welcome, and I'll be happy to start hearing your...
Thank you. Yeah, sure. So thanks, first of all, thanks for Hila's introduction and also like a brief of this gaming localization blend. And also thanks for having me here to join the webinar and share my experience with the participants. And I believe some of the participants is actually from the gaming industry. So please feel free to share your insights and ask questions during our session, because most of my experience are coming from the localization point of view. So talking about is a gaming localization talent is such a niche market compared with the other industry. So most of the talent managers, they actually recruit the talents from the gamer community instead of the translator communities. And also this talent has to like and enjoy playing games in order to know the terminology and to understand the industry and also speak the same language as our gaming clients. So that's actually quite of a crucial elements for these talents. And then later, I also want to emphasize a little bit is about this translator and the game tester should be separated into two roles, because the game tester requires even much in-depth technology knowledge, and also has to sensitivity about this functional quality checking, and also kind of the gatekeeper to ensure the localized content is acceptable for the target marketing. So from our survey, it shows like 100%, all these people who took this survey, the 100% says the function quality is kind of the challenging to them. So this is a part of the LQA phase that we also call the FQA that we should include in this process. And so this is the reason why we have to separate these two roles in different sections.
Right, I couldn't agree more. I hope when our listeners or audience here work with other maybe vendors, take it into consideration that this is a very critical issue, the talents. Let's talk about China a bit, Anne. You are based in Shanghai now and working with Chinese game developers mostly, but not only. These companies are going out of China to the North America, to Europe, taking their games out of China. What are the big or unique things about these game developers, and what should they be careful about when they localize their games?
I think I can share like the trend currently in China is English is no longer the source language. I mean, previous years, probably you're talking to the clients and say, hey, we should do like a 2-step translation and we should start everything from English. This is actually not that fancy anymore in AAA's companies in China, because nowadays clients wants to keep their Chinese original narrative in Chinese, and they are afraid once we translate into English and this narrative, which especially the content relates to history and the culture, then everything can be changed and probably is completely become the new story. That's the reason why we want to keep this language in Chinese. And also I have a case study that I can...
Just to clarify, so the source is Chinese and they take it directly to other European languages instead of doing Chinese to English and English to German. They'll do Chinese to German to keep the narrative and the accuracy of
So it's not just English. They want to put start from Chinese to also German and also Italian and French, like Hila just mentioned. So this is very different than before, and this is really kind of the trend right now in China market. And so here I want to share with you this to me probably it's the big mistake that I made from my past experience. It's like there's a Chinese client came to us and just told us like this is a history storyline, and they want to do this Chinese to English translation. So the default arrangement at that time is immediately assign an English speaker to translate this content. But then after we finish these thousands and millions of in-game content, but then later we got this feedback from the client and say, hey, come on, this English version couldn't be used at all because this whole story is already off. It's kind of like a anyways, it's like this is not
Lost in
original Chinese
translation.
history. Yeah, probably that's the best way to adapt it to establish this situation is lost in translation. So therefore, we had a few times of brainstorming, and then later we hire somebody who's born to speak two native languages with the two cultural background. It's actually Chinese born in America. And we have this person to translate the first round and redo the whole thing again, but we still keep this English speaker to review. And of course, follow up with the rest of this LQA process. And then later it comes out a great success. So after that experience, like right now, the language pair probably won't be the main elements we should consider how to arrange the team for the client. The game genre and the content is also as important as this language pair. So yeah, that's my experience.
Make sure your linguists are very familiar with the history, the culture, can maintain the narrative and keep the same storyline when it shifts into other languages. That's a great tip.
Exactly.
Just trying to see, yeah. And also when they are going to the West, sometimes they need to be careful about other people culture. Right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so we have some case study that I can share here. It's like one of these Chinese companies who wants to celebrate this Ramadan with their colleagues in Turkey, but then they turned out to put on these figures with the one hand, like one hand with the beer and the other hand with the food on their banner. But the main thing of this Ramadan celebration is fasting, so you shouldn't eat. And also in this Muslim culture, like you shouldn't drink alcohol. So then it turns out is well, probably it's a disaster. Yeah, I guess that's the right word to say. And so the colleague was like, okay, this is completely off, and they have like redo everything again. So this is one of the things that also quite typical that the Chinese client can make.
Right. They want to celebrate a Western or a different culture holiday, but they need to be sensitive and know it very well before going to the market.
All right.
Interesting. Let's talk a bit about companies that are entering China, coming from the West into China, from the US into China. What should they be careful about?
I think the most important thing is, China is not the West. So a lot of jokes or metaphors that in the West perhaps is normal, like just like some daily activities, but it can cause serious problems here in China. So just try to avoid any elements that relate to politics and morality contents, then that will make your product easier to launch in Chinese market, and also as much acceptable for the Chinese gamers.
Right. So we need to be careful and make sure that you are not using words that must be avoided and terms that are very risky, right?
Just need to make the right joke.
As a marketeer, I couldn't, skip this topic of marketing in China because, it's very, very challenging for us coming from the world of Google, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook into this country where everything is blocked, right?
It is, yeah, it is. And even like LinkedIn also just got blocked like last year, I guess. So, I mean, all these social medias from the West, they got blocked in China. And even they don't block in certain like Asian countries, for example, like Japan and Korea. But however, they are still not the most common channels for them. So in that, and also if we speak about these ISBN codes, I mean, everybody from the gaming industry, they should very familiar with it. Like you need to have this ISBN code in order to like launch your games in this Chinese market. So for all these regulation applications, the easy way is to cooperate with the local vendors. So can make your life easier and make your product much easier to launch in this market.
Right, yeah. Thank you for that. And one last topic is internationalization. We saw that some people, this is their main challenge, that their company, the game development, is not really taking it.
Exactly. I mean, just this vocabulary, internationalization, is already so difficult to understand the whole thing and also pronounce it. So, I mean, this is something like also typical that we can see from this UI localization. If we can consider the localization in the development phase and we start to do this market research and to understand, because most of people probably it's very rare to know that the language length can be the big issue into this localization phase. So if we can start coding the games in a right way from the development phase, and then later we get into this localization part and can make two teams easier to make this production process. So yeah, this is about internationalization, that if the teams can cooperate like much better, start from the proper market research, then it can save a lot of time.
Right. Before we move to the questions that we have here, we also, maybe the last point here, Anne, if you want to, we noticed that many game developers are looking for a one-stop localization service, right?
Yeah, like most of the publishers and development, they prefer to have this one-stop localization service started from like a content analysis till like the voiceover in the end of this whole phrase. So I think this is also what we can offer.
Right. So just to summarize this section about the translation or the localization of the text and the in-game text, and recap this section, this is the process as we see it, and we are very, very proud to provide the service from A to Z, from the content through the translation, video, voice, audio, and we will talk about it now, and post-processing, publishing, and all the QA for everything that is in the game, around the game, and other marketing related content. So I want just to address some of the questions that we have here. Okay, so Rudy asked, how can we collaborate with Blend? Rudy, we are happy to collaborate with anyone. I'm not sure the company you're from, but if it's an LSP or a game developer, we are very, very happy to meet you. We provide the service directly to game developers. We provide our service through other partners. So happy to take it in person. And the other question that we have here from Karen, I believe. No, how can we, as a LSP, a service provider? Well, yeah. So we work with lots of LSPs too. So we're happy to work with you and provide you with our translation, voice, video localization services. And the other question, one second. Aisha, okay. I noticed two variants of Chinese, but not for Spanish, Arabic, or French, as I was expecting. I guess you are asking about the Red Games localization. Is there an explanation for that? Is it a request from the client or a decision on your end? Usually, the language pairs request is dependent on the client. We very often we come in and consult or support the decision and advise them on which dialect or which languages to go with. But many times, if they chose to go with one Spanish or one Arabic dialect, many companies have it as a policy. Like they do one Arabic that is the most generic or most popular. And for French, if it's not French Canadian, if they are going to France. So I believe on this, in this case, it was the client decision. I hope it helps. And one more questions. Are there any specific terms that should be avoided in China for gaming localization? Anne, would you like to take this one? I think you can.
Okay. Yeah, I can pick up this typical examples for you is, for example, like in the content, you cannot mention blood. So in order to replace blood, that's why you can see from the game itself, you usually use HP, like a hit point or something to replace blood. So this is one of the typical taboo, I guess, that you have to avoid. because blood probably equals to violent. So that's the reason.
Wow, it's not like this in the Western world at all. Very interesting. Another question, what design or authoring tool you're using for localization images or voiceover? Let's take it with the next speaker, Chris, who is going to talk about our voiceover. And I guess for design, we are working with all file types and systems from InDesign to Photoshop, Figma, but maybe for gaming there are other tools that Chris might be more familiar with. Chris, do you want to take it now or later?
Sure, I can talk about it a little bit now. With design, typically what you see in video games now is you've got game engines. So a lot of companies are working in things like Unity or Unreal Engine or whatever their game engine may be that they're using. In terms of the audio aspect of it, it can be any DAW that the company sees fit. We use Pro Tools, but other companies may use Reaper, Adobe Audition, Nuendo. There's all sorts of different ones on the market that people use, but there really is no industry standard. It's whatever the designer prefers to use, whatever the client prefers to use. Whatever makes the process and the workflow streamlined between the game developer and the localization studio. Typically, we find things like for video, Adobe Premiere or Final Cut Pro, if it's a Mac-based system, is where the video is typically going to lie, the video elements.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Chris, for this
Sure.
Great answer. And with that, that's a great segue to voice and video localization, voice recording. And I'm very, very happy to give the stage to Chris Dituri, our voice director for gaming. Chris, maybe you can tell us where you're based now and go ahead and lead us.
Sure, absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. First off, let me apologize. Spring has started for me today, apparently, and my allergies are like 1,000,000%. So if you hear me sniffling like crazy, that's what's going on. I am based in Atlanta. I have been with Blend for about 5 years now. And in the gaming industry, I have worked with a couple of different companies. I've worked with BioWare Montreal. I have worked with CCP Games in the past. I have worked with Shark Mob in the past. So I've got a little bit of experience in this field. I am very excited to be here. Very excited to talk with you guys today.
Great. Can I move to the first slide?
Absolutely. So I think it's important in gaming that we have to look at, before we talk about anything that's going on with voiceover in gaming localization, we have to look at where we've been. And this clip from Resident Evil, which was originally on the PlayStation, kind of illustrates where we started with voiceover in gaming. So if we want to play that.
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right. Barry, thanks for saving my life. But Barry, didn't you say you're going back to the dining room to do some research? Why on earth are you here?
I just had something I wanted to check. Now, let's get back to searching for the lost captain and Chris, shall we?
So, believe it or not, this clip, which is now a meme all over the internet, was cutting edge back in the day. This was pushing the boundaries of what gaming could do, 25 years ago, 25 plus years ago. There was a real disconnect between what the animation studios could provide, what gaming voiceover studios could do, and we were so far behind what could be done in film, what could be done in television, what could be done in just regular animation. the disconnect between game engines and game sound was just so far behind that everything was cartoonish, everything was stilted, and that was just how it was. There was not a market for this kind of work. Nowadays, voice acting in video games is absolutely prestigious. You know, we've gone to this more authentic, grounded, cinematic, more in line with what you see in a modern film, with what you see in modern television, with what you watch on Netflix. And it's the best thing is that it's available for all sizes of developers, all games, all things can get into this because the workflow has been so streamlined. The process has been so streamlined. The engines are better. The animations that we crank out is better. And at this point, gamers expect it. You know, it is expected in almost every game, unless you're making something where voice is not a focus, it's really expected that you're going to have voice acting. Something to note on this slide is take a look at some of these names. You've got Idris Elba was in Cyberpunk 2077, Phantom Liberty. Celebrities are now breaking into mainstream game voice acting. Keanu Reeves has been in a ton of games. Willem Dafoe, Elliot Page. I mean, tons of famous actors are in games all the time now. So our medium is really just blowing up on the voice acting side. So everything starts with talent casting. And like I said, stilted and cartoonish. Now we're going grounded and cinematic. We build a talent roster at Blend, and this is kind of rules that we follow everywhere, but at Blend specifically, which is what I can speak to, we build our talent roster on different key metrics and measurements. What I kind of look for is voice print uniqueness. We look a lot for character archetype fulfillment. What I mean for that is, in most video games, you have an antagonist, you have a protagonist, you have heroes and villains. So we're always looking for that kind of voice. We're looking for a person that fits that archetype. And within those archetypes, you're looking for different sub-archetypes. You know, the tortured villain, the tortured hero, the things like, you know, all and everything in between. The crooked cop, the grizzled war hero, the jilted lover, anything you can think of is a voice archetype, and that's something in gaming that we look for, and it's truly unique. It far exceeds anything that you look at in commercial acting, things like that. We also look at demographic fulfillment. We look at the age, the sex, the language. We look at audio quality. We look at their experience in gaming credits, and then we look at other intangibles. You know, the voice attitude, their confidence, things like that. All of that goes into talent casting.
Right.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
So with talent management, I kind of look at this slide and I say to myself, well, what if you're a localization company or you're a game developer and you don't have a vendor that manages these relationships? You can kind of look through all of these bullet points and see what you're missing on this. You can get contracts with talents, but you're going to get the street price. You know, if you can find them online, you're going to have to set up all of your pay portals by yourself with them, and every talent pays differently. You know, there are some that have agents, some that don't. You're going to have to set all your expectations separately with each talent. You're going to have to deal with a calendar full of availability, all of those things, and you're going to have to deal with all of the talent updates. A talent gets sick, all of those things. So a company like Blend is what manages all of those relationships and keeps all of that together for you. Because with talent, you've got so many different situations, so many different types of talents, so many different types of management situations. Some have agents, some don't. Different contracts, different rules.
many companies also look for some kind of exclusivity or want to retain the same voice for the same game for all the versions, right? It's also a big issue with talent.
Right. It's a big issue. It's you have to have basically almost a legal team that knows how to see through all of this and how to work with all of this and understand, because yeah, exactly like you said, you may have one talent that wants exclusivity for certain things, or you may run into a talent that you find out later they can't work on the project because of something else. And if you go at it by yourself, try to localize your game by yourself, you don't know all these stipulations and all these rules up front.
Right. Let's talk about the studios and the quality. What do you recommend for game developers to pay attention to?
So the biggest thing with game studios is continuity. It's got to be continuity, because a lot of these games, there's something in the industry called games as a service, which is the big rage right now. It used to be back in the day when you bought and I'm showing my age here, but when you bought a Super Nintendo game or a Nintendo game, you bought the game, you played it, and that was it. The game was over. Now, these games continue for ages. I mean, World of Warcraft is a prime example. Let's take that as a little kind of case study. World of Warcraft came out in 2004. The game is now 20 years old, and it's still going. They update it with downloadable content. They update it with expansions, but it has to sound the same. Over the course of that 20 years, it has to sound the same. And in order to do that, you need studio continuity. You need the same gear. You need the same talents for the most part. You need the same studios. And you need those studios to sound the same. So, for instance, we've got here Blend Studios. We've got 3 on-site studios. We've got them equipped with more or less the same gear. Pro Tools in each studio, Source Connect Pro, UA hardware, UA plugins, U87 microphones, large monitors for dubbing, and we try to keep any of our remote studios the same way too. A good gaming studio will do that. That way every session sounds the same. And everything you record, whether you're doing 1.0 in the game or 4.0, which is 3 expansions up, the continuity is going to be the same. And that's the most important. It's not like you're a band making a record and you want the next record to sound decidedly different than the one before it. You want everything to be exactly the same. So that's the most important thing.
Let's talk about session dynamics and directing sessions.
Sure. So in a gaming session, now this could be an English to English, this could be English to Spanish, it could be localized or not. It's going to run the same way. You've got your voice talent, you've got an engineer, you may have 2 engineers, depending on what kind of session it is. If it's a video sync, an ADR, or, if it's a straight voiceover, it may just be 1 engineer. You'll have a voice director and you'll have a script coordinator. Shout out to Joel, our script coordinator, who is in here. When you have a script coordinator, they are basically taking notes for you and making sure that they take all of the takes down. So you can see this example here of a sample script we've had. Every time a voice talent does a take on a script, the script coordinator is marking down which one the director wanted, while the engineer is recording all of this and doing comps, which basically is comping takes together, compositing one take into another. So if a director said, I really liked the beginning of take A and I really liked the end of take C, let me hear what they sound like together. The engineer will composite those together. Sessions typically last from 1 to 4 hours. The scripts are managed in Google Docs or some software where edits are made live and everyone can see it. That's the most important part, is the scripts have to be changed live so that when the director makes a change, the talent can see it on the fly.
Right, and many times you bring in the translator too when it's needed, right?
Yes, that can also be definitely arranged. a lot of times too, just to note, in a localization session, the client oftentimes will speak the language too. So sometimes you'll have a translator, and then you'll have the client and the translator will also be kind of going back and forth on their thoughts. Or you may have a director that speaks the language. So it's all sorts of different takes on it. I've seen it so many different ways. I've seen it where the engineer speaks the language, so it's kind of like you get the coverage with the whole staff.
Great.
Yeah.
Next slide.
Yeah. So game direction, this is one of the most overlooked things and one of the most important things in a game localization and just a video game session in general. People seem to think that if you're a game director, that you're just sitting back and you're like, yeah, that take sounded dope. Let's take that. That's the best one. There is so much more with game direction. Through direction, what we're doing is we're crafting like a synergistic language set for characters in this fictional world. But it's also got to make sense in our real world. Whether that's an English world, a Spanish world, a Chinese world, a Polish world, a French world, whatever we're localizing to. And what's important with this is based on the changes that the director makes in the script, it can have real-world implications in the game. Or I'm sorry, in-world implications in the game. So when a game is localized, the game director is kind of the last stop before the game world is totally fleshed out that way. And I've got an example on the next slide. I believe it's the next slide.
Yeah.
Yes. So, for those of you who play games, Cyberpunk 2077 is a great example. I'm going to give you a brief synopsis. This game came out a few years ago, had a very rocky launch, but it has since become one of the best games that came out in the last few years. It is basically an urban fantasy set in the future. You play a character named V. You are kind of like a fixer in the world that you go and you work with street gangs and things like that. It's a first-person shooter, kind of an open-world RPG, but it is very story-driven. It is very cinematic. And the game is very stylized. It's got its own language set. It's made by CD Projekt Red. It's got its own language set. They'll use words like preem, which, preem means premium, short for premium. And it's like when somebody says, oh man, that's really sweet, or that's really cool. In the game, they're saying, oh, that's really preem, which that's their version of really cool. Another word they use is choom. And basically what choom is it's a kind of like a neo-African American slang. It's used in this inner city environment to refer to friends or family members. And it's kind of been appropriated by all the citizens in this game. It's short for choomba. You're my choom, you're my friend, you're my pal. Now, you're probably wondering why I'm telling you this story, why it's important. Well, here's why it's important. It is basically like a prestige word in the game. Now, an English director who sees this game might turn around and say, okay, well, I'm going to use choom in this spot, this spot, this spot, this spot. It's important here. I'm going to use it here. A Japanese director might look at it and say, well, I don't like choom here. It's not proper. Or a French director may say, well, we wouldn't say choom in this scenario. So what has that done? They've taken the word out. They've changed the context of the scene. And it's changed a part of the world in the game. So it reads differently in French than it does in English. Same thing in Japanese. Going back to kind of what Anne talked about, it's almost like the blood, no blood thing. You change the context of the game. You change the implications in the game world when you change these things. It's the same thing as certain holidays in a game that maybe the game is made in China and they have certain holidays that Americans don't recognize. So a game director will turn around and they'll say, well, Americans are not going to know what that is, so we need to change it. Or Americans are not going to get that reference, so we need to change it. And that's the importance of game direction, because game direction sets the stage for the world in that country, and it's got reaching implications in the game.
Right.
So very important stuff. So the creative services that are offered typically from a game localization studio, you've got, like we talked about, script coordination. The other thing is editing. After all these things are recorded, they're going to need to be edited. Basically, an editor will take the long audio file that you recorded, can be 4 hours, it can be 2 buffers of 2 hours, and they chop it all down into prompts. They clean them up also, noise reduce, anything that's needed, normalize the volume. Dubbing, basically will dub in over a Chinese video, a Spanish video, do English to it, or vice versa, any sort of other language. A lot of houses will offer sound design too, and post-production services. So not just the voice. It can be a one-stop shop situation where you get your voiceover done, you get your sound design for the game done. Post-production can also be implementation, using things like WWise, Unreal Engine 5 to implement your sound design in the world of the game. Then you've got the in-house direction we've spoken about, and then finally video sync. If you're doing your trailers, your in-game cinematics, syncing all the voiceover to make that tight picture.
And here we see the entire process, right?
Yes, that is from start to finish. So, and I'm admittedly, because I'm the other side of the glass guy, the account management, that's where the company acquires the account, they begin managing it, deciding what needs to happen, the order is entered, and then from there we go. That's the script preparation, that's getting everything locked in. That's a guy like Joel that I mentioned, taking the script and formatting it all and getting it in the right format on a Google sheet and getting everything lined up, getting the host, what I call the host copy, which is the language it started in, and then the language it's going to, lined up. Then from there, we go into the casting, the voice production, all of that falls into that, the recording. Then from there, we're doing the editing, all the post-production. Then we're doing quality assurance. Someone like me is sitting here and listening to all of it and making sure that every take is perfect. Every take is clean, no clicks and pops. All the breaths are where they should be. All the breaths are where, no breaths are where they shouldn't be. Everything is spaced out and natural sounding. And it's, converted all to the format that the client needs. And then finally we deliver. And then the other thing that's not on this slide that I should have put on here is after delivery, there's revisions. A client will come and say, we listened to this, and this line is not working like we thought it would. Is there another take we can, so then you go back to your book of takes and you say, yeah, well, I've got a B take, a C take, a D take, and I'll send you those over. So it's a process, definitely, of going through and getting all the different takes together to get the best project.
Right. You want to move to our examples?
Absolutely. So what we have here is, just to go back to the Resident Evil, you guys have seen where we came from. And we put together a little project here. This was made by a game developer friend of mine. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to talk about this project because it's kind of an NDA thing, but they were kind enough to share a clip with me that I did some little sound design and voiceover to with a couple of voice actors. And we did an English version, and we also did a Spanish version. So you guys can see what an English to Spanish localization clip sounds like and looks like. This was made in Unreal Engine 5, by the way, with MetaHuman and a little bit of mocap, so you can kind of see what that process looks like and what this is built off of. The audio was done in Pro Tools.
Play.
Are you sure you want to go in there?
I think that's the only way to find an answer. Did you hear that?
What is this? What's going on? Run! Run!
Second, the Spanish.
¿Estás segura de que quieres entrar ahí?
Creo que es la única forma de encontrar una respuesta. ¿Has oído eso?
¿Qué es esto? ¿Qué está pasando? ¡Corre! ¡Corre!
Chris, any closing words from you?
I just am very excited to be in this industry that I love so much. Gaming has been a big part of my life, and I'm so glad that you guys took the time to listen to me. And if you have any questions or you would ever like to reach out and discuss, I'm here all the time.
Great. So let's see if we have any questions from our audience. And do we see questions? Let's see. And guys, if you have more questions, type them now in this Q&A box. Okay. Considering cultural and local sensitivities, can you touch on the role of AI and MAT in this process? I guess we can talk about AI and machine translation for the translation, but also related to the voice. And Chris, who wants to take this one? I can start by saying, Ahmed, that AI is playing a key role in the translation part, but when it comes to gaming, and we heard so much about the limitations and the culture sensitivity and the UI requirements, there is always a very, very critical phase of human reviewing, editing, polishing, changing the content to make sure it's the right one. So we see that it's still very, very critical part of the process, the human element. Chris, maybe you want to say a word about AI voice and gaming?
Well, we know it's there. It's definitely something that companies are beginning to experiment with. It is pretty, I mean, I'll just be blunt. It's pretty shunned in the voice community for gaming. You know, it's not something that is well received. And part of it is because you can't get the kind of nuanced performance yet in an AI voice that you can in a human voice for voiceover for gaming, you know? It does work for things like IVR, phone prompts, even commercials, but it's just not there yet for gaming. The tech isn't there, and it's taken jobs from people in the gaming industry. So it's not something that is common practice for the voice aspect of it. But we kind of know it's there. We see companies dabbling with it, and that's kind of where we're at right now.
Okay. Any other questions that you guys want to ask us? What important aspects need to be considered when selecting voices for different languages? This is a question from Jill. And we will see it on the screen in a second. Chris, did you get the question?
Yes.
Okay.
I think when I select voices, regardless of the language, the rules are always the same. It's kind of, you're looking at the character. You know, when we get a character, we usually get a character description. A lot of times what we'll get is an image of the character, or even video of the character, depending on where the game dev is in the process. And then we start listening to demos, and we start envisioning what we think that character will sound like based on the traits. You know, are they boisterous? Are they humble? Are they sarcastic? Are they cold? Are they warm? Are they so those things are all considered when we listen to the demo. You know, are they cool? Are they confident? Are they So that's really what you're looking at, is that kind of archetype, you know, and then we're looking at things like, you know, like I said, there's that concept of heroes and villains, which not every character is a hero and villain, but is this character good? Are they chaotic good? Or are they bad? Or are they, you know, neutral? And we kind of look at voice print based on that. That's the big term, is voice print. What is your print? And that doesn't change based on what language you speak. So it's all about that voice print, really.
Thank you. We have another question that I can see here from Laya. What is the thought process for dialogues in cutscenes when they depend on the player's actions? For example, the low honor and high honor. I can't read, sorry.
Yeah, the low on. I know what she's talking about.
Red Dead Redemption 2.
Yeah, so in Red Dead Redemption 2, just to give everyone a little background, the choices you make in the game take you on a different path. So basically, if you make high morality choices and you're essentially a good cowboy, you'll have one set of dialogue, versus if you make low morality choices, you'll have another set of dialogue, and that will set you on a path of a different story. So basically what we do is, you know, these lines are all written out, and we have kind of, in a game like this, what you would have is kind of a dialogue tree that this follows. And, you know, a director will read through this and say, okay, if Arthur Miller is picking these low morality choices, then his voice performance is going to have to change and become more villainous, because that's what he's becoming. You know, he's growing as a character from neutral to villainous. And that's what we look at as a voice team, is we have to make sure that we stay on brand this whole time, because this guy's making bad choices. It's very similar to the process in which, you know, a yes/no dialogue or something like that is made in a game. You pick yes, it leads you down this path. You pick no, it leads you down this path. A lot of times in a script it's written out that way. They may have like a low morality branch that it's like, okay, we're recording all the low morality stuff today. We're recording all the high morality stuff today. Now, I can't speak to how Rockstar did this exactly, but that's the process I've seen in other games. So that's probably how it was done, something like that.
Thank you, Chris. Our time is short, but I do want to address all the questions we have here. Could you please elaborate on dialects in voiceover? Are there any specific considerations when it comes to localization? If I may answer this one, so as I said, the language pairs and the dialects is something that is being decided or discussed together with the clients. Usually, localization managers, game developers, they know exactly what market they are going into or after. And we can help with research, we can help with analysis, but choosing the right dialects is really, really dependent on the target audience and where the gamers are. Anne, do you want to add something here?
Yeah, but actually you answered
Okay,
the question
great.
already. So yes, this is certainly the client's decision, but we can of course support in some ways. And also if a client already have like some contents are landed in the market, in the target markets, we can also do the research and to see like how's the reaction from the market at the moment and try to give more opinions and to see like how we can optimize it.
Right, and because as Anne said, our talents, our linguists are also gamers, we can ask them if they are from the local target market, they can help with the choosing. Do you have a pre-selection of accent-free voices, or do you review and update punctuation manually? I guess we do have, right? We have accent-free voices, Chris?
Absolutely. When we do our voice roster, basically, we kind of a two-part process. We fill our general voice roster based on two things. We do it based on general need, so we'll say we really need more German talent. So we'll go and we'll generally get more German talent. But then, if we have a gaming need in particular, we need for this game, we need an English voice, and he needs to sound like he's from New York, the Upper East Side, and he needs to be in his 30s. We'll go and we'll find that specific voice. But in our general voice roster, yes, we're always looking for, English neutral, UK neutral, German neutral, even Spanish neutral, Chinese neutral, voices that are free of any sort of regional dialect. So yes, we do have accent free.
Thank you. Do we have more questions? Let's see. That's it. Okay. I want to thank you all for joining us. I know we are 2 minutes after time, but it was very, very interesting. I hope we gave you some food for thought. We are more than happy to take your questions in person and to help and, advise or whatever is needed. Chris and Anne, myself, and the entire Blend team, voice and translation and localization, we are here for you. Let us know what you thought. We'll be sharing this with you, the recording, the summary, and thanks again for joining us. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, guys.
Good night, Anne. I appreciate you staying so late. Thank you so much. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Take care, guys. Thank you.
Bye.